नमो विश्वपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि श्री गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. The hippies began right here, right? The hippies began to pick up the chanting. They had come together, but there had been no center, no lecture, no amplified music. But now they began clapping and swaying, getting into the chanting as if it were their single purpose. The chanting grew stronger, and after an hour, the group broke into a spontaneous dance, joining hands and singing out, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. They skipped and danced together, circling the tree and Swamiji's disciple. To the hippies, it was in fact a love pageant rally, and they had found the love and peace they were searching for. It was in this mantra. Hare Krishna had become their anthem, the reason for coming together, the life of the love pageant rally. They didn't know exactly what the mantra was, but they accepted it as something deep within the soul, a metaphysical vibration. They tuned into it. Even the clown began chanting and dancing. Only the policeman remained aloof and sober, though he also could see that the new demonstration would be a peaceful one. The dance continued, and only the impending dusk brought the love pageant rally to a close. The devotees hurried back to Swamiji to tell him all that had happened. He had been sitting at his desk translating the Srimad Bhagavatam. Although he had not been physically present at the kirtan, his disciples had acted on his instructions. So even without leaving his room, he was spreading the chanting of Hare Krishna. Now he sat waiting for the report. They burst into his room with shining eyes, flushed faces, and hoarse voices, relating the good news. Not only had they dutifully chanted, but hundreds of people had joined them and swung and danced in a big circle, in a spirit of unity. Swamiji, you should have seen, Brahmananda explained, his voice now exhausted from chanting. It was fantastic, fantastic. Prabhupada looked from one face to another, and he also became like them, elated and hopeful that the chanting could go on like this. They had proved that their chanting of Hare Krishna could lead the love and peace movement. It could grow and hundreds could take part. It is up to you to spread this chanting, Swamiji told them. I am an old man, but you are young and you can do it. So the devotees who were chanting at the Love Pageant rally, and the hippies there were starting to pick up their chanting. And even though there was no like amplifier or like center or lecture, the hippies started chanting and they started clapping and swaying. And through this mantra, they started to feel the actual love and peace that they were searching for the reason of coming to this rally. And everyone there started dancing and chanting. Only the policemen didn't chant or dance. Everyone else started. And the chanting continued and only stopped due to the impending dusk that brought the rally to close. And the devotees then hurried back to Prabhupada to tell him all that had happened. And even though Prabhupada wasn't there, because the devotees had acted on his instructions, he was spreading the chanting of Hare Krishna even without leaving his room. And now he was waiting for the report. And when the devotees came, they burst into his room with shining eyes and flushed faces and telling him the good news, saying that not only had they chanted the mantra, but hundreds of people joined them and started singing. And Prabhupada also became joyful like them, and he told them that now it is up to them for chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra because he is an old man, but they are young. You can do it. AJ, you can read.
Yeah, you got to scroll down a little, right? There you go. October 13th, the Village Voice ran 4 large photographs of the Love Pageant rally. The article stated, the backbone of the celebration was the mantras, holy chants from the Sanskrit Bhagavad Gita. And for 3 hours, it became like a boat on a sea of rhythmic chanting. Led by 15 disciples of Bhaktivedanta Swami, who operates from a storefront on 2nd Avenue, the mantras ebbed and flowed with the rhythm of drums, flutes, and soda-capped tambourines. October 18th. It was a Sunday, and again they went to Tompkins Square Park. Swamiji played the bongo as before, striking the drumhead deftly as ever, his nimble fingers creating drum rolls as he sat on the rug in the autumn afternoon. His authentic melodic voice recited the prayers to the previous spiritual masters, Bhaktivinoda, Gaurakishora, Bhaktisiddhanta, the centuries-old disciplic succession of which he was the living representative, now in the 1960s in this remote part of the world. He sang their names in duty, deference, and love as their servant. He sat surrounded by his American followers under the tall oak tree amid the maze-like fences of the park. And the same magic occurred. This time the hippies came by with more ease and familiarity. Allen Ginsberg came again, and 100 others gathered as Prabhupada loudly saying, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Of the hundreds who came by, and some stayed briefly and then left. Some decided to listen and chant for a few minutes, or even for the entire afternoon. And very few marked their encounter with the Swami as an unforgettable change in their life. So right after the rally, there was an article in the Village Voice, and it was talking about how essentially of the whole rally, the main thing that ended up happening, the backbone of the rally was the chanting of the Maha Mantra, and again, it was kind of gave everybody a little more insight to who these guys were and who Prabhupada was, and let people know where the store was, where the storefront was. And then, the following Sunday they went and they tried it again. They went out, to Tompkins Square Park with Prabhupada this time. And, he started with reciting the prayers to his spiritual masters. And then more and more people just came. Hundreds of people came more willingly this time. Last time it's like they stumbled upon it, where this time it sounds like they came intentionally to be a part of it. And, they were all chanting, and some stayed, and some folks were just popping in, some were staying the whole afternoon. And, some said this was a kind of the biggest, I guess, a turning point in their lives, a big changing moment for them was this encounter with Prabhupada that day.
Vijayanand, you can read. Vijayanand.
Sorry. And the same magic occurred. This time, the hippies came by with more ease and familiarity. Allen Ginsberg came in, and 100 others gathered as Prabhupada loudly sang, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Of the hundreds who come by, some stayed briefly and then left. Some decided to listen and chant for a few minutes, or even for the entire afternoon. And very few, marked their encounter with the Swami as an unforgettable change in their lives. Bob Carnes was looking for the Swami. He was walking with his stylishly dressed wife and 2-year-old son. Eric Bob was 26 years old and worked as a supervisor in the New York City Welfare Department. He had grown up in Washington, D.C., where he had met his wife. He had a full face and broad forehead, a clear voice, and steady eyes. Bob, after I graduated from George Washington University, I decided to go straight to what I thought was the heart of the material world, New York City, to seek out whatever was the highest truth. I ended up living around the corner from the First East Village head shop. Bob did not think his job as a social worker really helped anyone. His clients over the years seemed to maintain the same outlook and habits. He and his wife frequented West Village coffee houses, had attended lectures by Leary and Alpert on expanded consciousness, and had taken part in a recent peace march. Bob had come to feel that his aspirations for a master's degree and better apartment were unfulfilling, and he was looking for something more. Bob, I heard about the I Ching, a book that was supposed to chart a person's course in life. So I got someone to do a reading for me. The direction was push upward through darkness. I took it as a good sign, a spiritual sign. Then I purchased the East Village Other and I saw the article entitled Save Yet Now. There was a picture of the Swami. I had reached in by a Sikh. I had picture of a Swami. I had read in a book by a Sikh teacher that there could be no higher knowledge without a spiritual master. So this gives the environment, basically the situation, like how the people came and went in the park when Prabhupada was doing the kirtan. Like some people stayed for some time and left, and some people stayed for more time, and they felt that it was an unforgettable change in their life. And then there is one person, Bob Correns. He was looking for the Swami in the park and came to the park with his well-dressed wife and a 2-year-old son. And Bob was working as a supervisor in the New York City Welfare Department. And Bob was he graduated from the George Washington University, and he came to he moved to New York City, living in the corner from the First East Village head shop. And Bob was doing the job in the social work department as a social worker, and he felt like he thought that it did not really help anyone, and his clients were maintaining the same outlook and habits. And he also taken part in the recent peace march, and he came for the aspirations for the master's degree and better apartment. But he felt like nothing was fulfilling him, and he felt that he needs something more. And he heard about a book which was supposed to chart a person's course in life, and in that it was given a direction that push upward through the darkness, and he felt that it was a good sign. Then he purchased the East Village Other, which is a newspaper where he saw an article, Save the Earth Now, and he saw the picture of Prabhupada there, and he earlier he remembered that he had a book by a Sikh teacher which mentioned that there will not be any higher knowledge without a spiritual master.
Thank you so much. Second, Prabhu, please sit.
Sure, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Every morning on his way to work, Bob used to pass by the Swami's storefront. Curious, he stopped once and peered in the window only to find an empty room with some straw mats on the floor and one of Swamiji's boys. Oh, these people are Buddhist, he thought. The door had been open and the boy came over and invited him in. No thanks, he said, thinking, I don't want anything to do with Buddhism. And he went on to his job. In a head shop one day, he had picked up one of the Swami's Bhagavatams and looked through it. But he thought it was too advanced, so he put it back down. After he read the article in the East Village Other, his interest increased. He thought that today might be the last Sunday of chanting in the park before the cold weather came. And so he went to the park, hoping to find the Swami and his chanters. His wife was beside him, pushing Eric in a stroller, when he heard the ching-ching of the hand cymbals and a chorus of rhythmic chanting from the south side of the park. Thinking it must be the Swami, he followed the sound, while his wife took Eric to play on the swings. Alone now, Bob drew closer, moving into the crowd until he could see the Kirtan party and the Swami sitting under the tree. Bob stood among a crowd of hundreds unnoticed. Everything is happening because of me, thought 19-year-old Judy Kozlovsky. Everything I see is my own creation and I am the supreme. Everything is mine. As the thought of being God obsessed her, Judy forgot her father and everything else. She was confused. If I am God, why can't I control everything? And why am I so fearful on LSD? So here it talks about the different people who used to look at the kirtan happening at the park. So Bob is one such person, and he used to pass by the Swami's storefront while going to work. And one day he stopped by to see the storefront, only to find an empty room and one of Swami's disciples. So he thought this was Buddhism and didn't want to do anything with Buddhism. But again, in one of the shop, he saw Swami's Bhagavatams and he looked over it and thought it was advanced. He also read the article about Save the Earth in the East Village Other. So his interest increased. So that particular Sunday, he thought it would be the last Sunday before the winter came in, and he wanted to meet Swami. So he came to the park with his wife, and then he heard the sound of the kirtans. So he, thinking it was the Swami, he went to the place and he saw that they were chanting. The kirtan party was there. Meanwhile, his wife took Eric to play on the swings, and he sat in the crowd among the hundreds unnoticed. And another young girl, Judy Koslovsky, was also part of that, and she was thinking like she is superior, like she is God, and she was having those thoughts as she was there. So she was another person who came to see the kirtan party.
That's interesting. Here also people thought they're God. Anyway, they work like that in such a way. So why I'm so fearful on LSD? Prasanthi, please.
Prabhuji, I will hear today.
Okay. Yeah, Nipa. Nipa, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, please read.
He was a student
We can, you can read now. No, your voice is breaking.
now, Prabhu.
Yeah, now it's better. Yeah.
Judy was a student at the City College of New York, majoring in art and history. She was taking guitar lessons from the Reverend Gary Davis, the blues singer and Christian preacher, who was teaching her the art of sad soul music. Today, however, under the influence of LSD, she had the overwhelming impression that she was God. She had had a fight with her father, who seemed cold and distant to her and couldn't understand her. She had left her parents' home in the Bronx and traveled downtown. She was going to visit a girlfriend, and Tompkins Square Park happened to be on the way. When she reached the park, the kirtana was going on, but she couldn't see much because of the crowd. She weaved her way in closer until she could see some men, one shaven-headed, several bearded, dancing with upraised hands. And in the center, she saw the Swami sitting on the rug playing his drum. Dan Clark was 25, thin, intense, horn-rimmed, bespectacled, an avant-garde filmmaker, and his first film was entitled Rebirth. He was a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War and was working at the Home for Children as alternative governmental service. He had been a member of the SDS and the War Resisters League. He had been arrested during a protest demonstration, and he had been suspended 1 week from his job for wearing a peace button and a black armband. He was into Buddhism, but he had lately been adding a little psychedelic seasoning. Everything is nothing and nothing is everything was his slogan, and he would go around chanting it like a mantra. But he was feeling that, and at least psychologically, he needed a devotional tonic. His Voidistic meditation was getting stale. So here it describes that about Judy. Judy was a student at the College of New York, majoring in art and history. She was taking guitar lessons from Reverend Gary Davis, the blues singer and Christian preacher, who was teaching her the art of sad soul music. And today, under the influence of LSD, she had the overwhelming impression about that she was the god, and she also had a fight with her father, who seemed to have a cold and distant attitude and couldn't understand her. So she left her parents' home in the Bronx and traveled downtown. She was going to visit her girlfriend, and Tompkins Square Park happened to be on the way. So, she reached the park. Kirtana was going on, and but she couldn't see much of the crowd. So she weaved her way in closer to see the men. So some she saw like shaven-headed, several bearded, dancing with the upraised hands, and at the center of it was Swamiji on the rug playing the drum. And there's describing another person, Dan Clark, who's 25, thin, intense, bespectacled. He's a filmmaker and had his film entitled Rebirth. He was the objector to Vietnam War and was working at home for children as an alternative governmental service. He was a member of SDS and War Resisters League also. He was arrested during a protest demonstration and has been suspended from work for 1 week, and he was wearing a peace button from his job for wearing a peace button and a black armband. And he was too much into Buddhism, and he had lately been into psychedelic season, and his slogan was uh, everything is nothing and nothing is everything. And he would chant that mantra. But he was feeling that at least psychologically he needed a devotional tonic, and Voidistic meditation was getting stable for him.
So Prabhupada's mantra, Nirbhisesa Sunyavadi Paschadhyastharan, is really very, very appropriate. I'm amazed to see that's the condition of America at that time also. People had all this voidism and impersonalism like everywhere. Pranathu, you can read.
Dan had come to the park today looking for the Swami and the chanting he had read about in the East Village Adhar. He had seen the Swami before one evening a few months back. He had been waiting for a bus across the street from the Swami's storefront. He was on the way to a rehearsal for a mixed media show, and his friend had gone into Sam's luncheonette for a moment when he noticed that in the storefront an orange robed Indian man with a shaved head was lecturing to a small group of young people. Then, when I saw him, I imagined myself walking across the street, going into the storefront, sitting down and renouncing all worldly connections. But I thought,
We can hear you. We can hear you. We can't hear you.
how about now, Prabhu?
Now better. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. So far?
Now here you can see, but I thought to myself. Are you outside? We can't hear you.
I just came upstairs.
Yeah, now when you speak, but when you read, we can't hear. Can you try the same way the way you're speaking now?
But I thought to myself, it's
Yeah,
only
good.
my imagination. After all, I'm married and I'm on my way to rehearsal, and I don't know anything about the Swami anyway. So my friend and I got on the bus. But Dan lived only a few blocks away from the storefront, and now and then he would pass by. Once he had stood for several minutes on the sidewalk, looking at the cover of the Srimad Bhagavatam taped onto the window. Dan, it showed an oval lotus with planets around it, and right then I was introduced to the idea of spiritual sensuality. When I saw the painting of Lord Chaitanya and his associates in the window, that really threw me. I thought, yes, this is what I need, juice. You're able to hear me, Prabhu? Right?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Um, Yeah, so Dan was looking for Prabhupada, uh, and the kirtan or chanting that he heard,
Yeah, there.
and so he was on his way to a mixed media show, and when he noticed, Prabhupada in that storefront, when he was lecturing to a group of young people, and Dan says he imagined himself was walking across the street, sitting down and renouncing all worldly connections. But that was his imagination. Uh, but then Dan just lived a few blocks away from the storefront, and he would pass by, um, and he looked at this, the cover page of Srimad Bhagavatam taped onto the window, and he was really attracted to that cover page with the lotus with the planets around it. And when he saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's big painting and all the eternal associates, that really, I guess, further, caught his attention, and he made up his mind, and then they went. I don't think I read this.
No, you didn't read that. Yeah. So it's sometimes it's interesting, the next neighbor itself, sometimes he doesn't know, he or she, they don't get involved at all. Not sometimes, most of the time. Always, it's interesting. Dan and his wife walked the paved pathway to the park. He was looking around for the Swami, but he didn't really know what to look for. He expected to see robes and hear Buddhist style chanting, but he couldn't find anything. He had given up his He had given up his search and was wandering around to see what musicians were there when he noticed a big crowd gathered around. What he figured must have been some musicians. He was attracted by the beat of their music, a chiming 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, a simple rhythm with a kind of flamboyance, and very magnetic. He saw an occasional upraised arm above the crowd, and he thought there must be flamenco dancing going on inside the circle. He then got wind of a drifting melody, certainly not flamenco, which accompanied the beat, and this attracted him further. He approached closer and closer, making his way through the crowd. Then he saw people chanting and others dancing and waving their arms in what he took to be a blend of American, Indian, and Asian dancing. It looked like something from a long forgotten era. Dan decided that this must be the Hare Krishna group, but there were no robes, just the regular dress of the Lower East Side, and there was the Swami. Then he saw him sitting inconspicuous, playing a little drum. His eyes were closed and his brow was knit with concentration. Dan, the Swami wasn't calling attention to himself. And at first, I didn't attribute any importance to an elderly Indian man sitting off to one side. He didn't seem to have any special function in the chanting. But it gradually dawned to me who he was. He was the same Swami I had read about in the paper and seen in the storefront. After a while he spoke, but I couldn't hear him. Still, I was impressed that he was a very modest person, not interested in getting himself up to a pedestal. He didn't go strutting around, but was still with inner peace, strength, and knowledge. Bob, all his disciples were there around his feet. they were chanting, and I tried to chant along and learn the mantra too. I had heard the chanting of Hare Krishna once before at a peace march, and I had found it very beautiful. Then the Swami spoke. I had the impression that this person was not earthly, and I thought, there he is the person I'm looking for. He seemed to be different from anyone else, like he came from some other place or universe. I was attracted. So Dan and his wife, they came to visit, then later they came to visit one day. Look for Swami. That's interesting. They got attracted, but they couldn't find anybody. Then he finds the crowd outside nearby. Big crowd gathered around. So he thought some music going on, and he drew his attention slowly. So he tried to figure out what it is. Then he figured out his Hare Krishna group. He saw Prabhupada also sitting there with closed eyes, playing that little drum. So Dan is sharing that the Swami wasn't calling attention to himself. That's interesting, right? So he's not he's simple. And at first I didn't attribute any importance to an elderly man's sitting off one side. And he didn't seem to have any special function in the chanting. But still, his attention was drawn to him. And then later he figures the same Swami where he saw in the paper, and he saw in the storefront, at the storefront. So Bob also shares his experience that he participated Love Pageant Rally before. Yeah, I think that's the one, right? Love Pageant Rally. So this is another opportunity for him to come and hear. He had some impressions. Those impressions that we see, even in India, actually, when we say a Swami means something extraordinary, great. We never know that, and it is there till now, that respect is there. But we don't know what is our responsibility with the Swami. We think the Swami is to be just to be worshipped. We never know until we can Hare Krishna. Swami is to be heard. Prabhupada also stated in the past, saying in LILAMRITA that if you hear, Swami is to be heard, not to be seen. So Bob also had similar kind of experiences, impressions that it's good. He seems to be from some other planet, but he also, when he started speaking, he realized that he's approachable, and I had the impression that this person was not an earthly, and I thought he the person I'm looking for. He seemed to be different from anyone else. So anyway, that's the Bob's experience he's sharing. AJ, back to you.
After a second kirtan, the Swami and his followers rolled up their rug, picked up their instruments, and began to leave. Bob walked back to the swings on the other side. Bob walked back to the swings on the other side of the park to find his wife and child, but the image of the Swami stayed with him. He seemed different from anyone else. His accent had been thick, yet Bob resolved to go to the storefront in a few days to hear him speak. Here is a leader, thought Bob. Dan and his wife sauntered off into the park, sampling the various groups of musicians. His wife was surprised that Dan, who was usually shy, had danced at the kirtan. He said he might go over to the storefront one day and hear the Swami speak. Judy just stood there hallucinating. She held a Stay High Forever pamphlet in her hand and read it over and over. While she was thinking the whole event must have come from another planet, a man walked up and asked, "Would you like to go where the Swami is?" She nodded. At the storefront, one of the devotees offered Judy some prasadam, a chapati, and then invited her up to the Swami's room. Upstairs, she entered the large front room, which was filled with fragrant smoke. There were tall flower vases, and sesame seeds were on the floor. She saw the Swami bow before the little picture of Lord Chaitanya and his associates, and then stand and leave the room, closing the door behind him. Judy decided that he must have been bowing to the floor itself. Around her, everyone was softly chanting on beads, and although she couldn't make out the words, it seemed peaceful. One of the Swami's disciples told her she could come into the back room, and she followed, curious. The Swami was sitting there on his mat, looking effulgent. There were about 10 other people in the room. Prabhupada asked her if she liked chanting in the park, and she replied, "I loved it." Keep going, or
Yeah, keep going.
yeah. So they, oh, sorry.
It's okay. You can go
Okay.
summarize now.
All right. So it's mostly these guys, Bob and Dan and Judy recounting their experiences the first time they saw Prabhupada. And Bob and Dan both resolved to go meet him at the storefront. And but then Judy was sitting there high as a kite. It sounds like hallucinating. And someone said, "Hey, do you want to go to where the to where Prabhupada is?" And she went with him and took prasad, and then when she got there, everybody was chanting. She saw Prabhupada bow, and for whatever reason, in her head, she decided that he was bowing to the floor for, I guess, drugs. But yeah, then she went into the back room there and saw Prabhupada sitting, and there were 10 other people in the room, and everybody was chanting, and she couldn't understand what they were saying, but she just thought overall it seemed pretty peaceful. So, and then Prabhupada asked her how she felt about the chanting, if she enjoyed it, and she told him she did. And yeah.
Judy, Dan's wife, right?
No, I think Judy was just somebody else.
She was an art student, I think,
Yeah.
at
Oh,
City.
so it mixed up. So I got it.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
Here's his wife didn't give the name here. Okay, nice. Yes, I can prove you can read.
Prabhupada asked her if she liked the chanting in the park, and she replied, "I loved it." "Do you live near here?" he asked. Judy flashed her an idea that she was the all-pervading truth and answered in a way which she thought must have sounded very mystical. "Oh, I live very near." "Good," said Swamiji. "Then you can come for our morning kirtan and class." Then she realized that she didn't live so near and that it would mean traveling an hour and a half from the Bronx to visit the Swami. But she decided that since he had asked her, she would come. Then she thought, "I'm making this up." But Prabhupada assured her, as if knowing her thoughts, "This process is nothing you have made up. It is very old, very simple and sublime." He leaned back. "We are eternal," he said, "and everything around us is temporary." Judy was now coming down from the LSD. By the time she left the Swami, it was late. She had wanted to stay overnight, but the boys hadn't allowed her. But she was determined to join. For Bob, it seemed natural to follow up on what he had seen in the park. He began attending the evening classes, and he started reading the Bhagavatam at home and chanting. He framed the picture from Bhagavatam dust jacket depicting the spiritual sky and placed it on his small homemade altar. He would offer flowers before the picture and sit before it chanting Hare Krishna. Bob was fascinated by the philosophy and the books and classes, and from the very beginning, he was amazed that Swamiji's teachings answered all his questions. He listened carefully and accepted. It seemed like once I had decided that he was telling the truth, I just accepted everything he said. Not that part of it was the truth, and the rest of it I would have to think about. So here, Judy basically came upstairs. She went to the back room where Prabhupada asked her if she liked the chanting. She said she loved it. And when Prabhupada asked if she was living near, she was high and she was saying that I'm living very near. And Swamiji asked her to join for the morning kirtan class. And that is when she realized that she would have to travel hour and a half from the Bronx to come for the morning class. And then when she thought that she is making this up, Prabhupada tells her about the process, that this is a very old, simple and sublime process, and that we are eternal and everything else is temporary. And now slowly the LSD was coming down. She wanted to stay overnight, but she was not allowed. And Bob it was basically natural. He was attracted to it naturally when he saw the kirtan in the park. So he began attending the evening classes. He started reading the Bhagavatam and also chanting. He framed the picture from the Bhagavatam, and then he made a small altar at home, and he would offer flowers and chant before it. And Bob was fascinated with the philosophy, and he was amazed at the teachings of Prabhupada, and it seemed to answer all of his questions. So, and once he accepted that he was telling the truth, he did not take some part of it and left and ponder about the rest. He would just accept everything, he said.
Thank you. So everyone should have an altar. You know how simply coming once they become devotee and they're working on the altar. So everyone should have a small or big altar, whatever it is. That's really changes, and it's the center of our home. You will find a big difference. If you don't have it, do it soon and let me know if I can help you. I used to help in the beginning, early days, how to set up altar. But nowadays I'm not getting because nobody asked me. So I suggest everyone set up nice altar at your home. Okay, Nipa, you can read again. Nipa?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah.
October 19th. It was Monday evening after the Sunday Kirtana in the park, and Dan arrived at the storefront for Kirtana. The Kirtana was in full swing, and when he entered, the first thing he noticed was some people playing on the innards of an upright piano leaning against the wall near the door. A boy handed him some wooden sticks, and he sat down and joined in the Kirtana. Then came the Swami's lecture, which Dan thought was long and serious about how sexual desire causes bondage and suffering. The temple was crowded and stuffy, and Dan was shocked by the lecture. But he stayed on because he knew there would be another Kirtana. He felt uneasy that the Swami's followers were all celibate, but because he liked the Kirtanas, he resolved to keep coming. The Swami wasn't quite what Dan had expected. He had imagined something of light-hearted Zen Roshi laughing and joking with sparkling eyes and words filled with paradoxes. But he found the Swami just the opposite, very straightforward and even cutting in his speech and his mouth turned down at the corners, making him look mournful. Dan happily looked to the kirtanas thinking they would aid his impersonal meditation. But the lectures kept stressing that God was a person. Dan resisted. He mentally debated with Prabhupada. He was partial to Dr. Radhakrishnan's interpretation of the Gita, and yet the Swami often launched ruthless attacks against such impersonal ideas. Gradually, Dan saw his impersonal barrier crumble, and he came to admit that on every count the Swami was right. So here on October 19th, which is a Monday evening, after the Sunday Kirtana in the park, Dan arrived for the Kirtana at the storefront. The Kirtana was going in full swing when he entered, and the first thing that came to his notice was some people playing on the innards of upright piano, leaning against the wall. A boy handed him to Dan some wooden sticks, and he sat down and joined the Kirtana. And then came Swami's lecture, which Dan found very long and serious, and which actually described about the sexual desire, how it leads to sufferings and bondages. The temple was crowded and stuffy, and Dan was shocked by the lecture but he stayed on still, and because he thought there's another kirtana coming after the lecture. He felt uneasy. The Swami's followers were celibate, and but because he liked the kirtanas, he kept coming. Swami wasn't quite the expectation to the expectation of Dan, and he imagined something of a light-hearted Zen Roshi laughing with sparkling eyes filled with paradoxes. But he found Swami exactly opposite. Swami was straightforward and even cutting in his speeches and mouth turned down the corners, making him look mournful. Dan happily took the kirtanas and then he would aid impersonal meditation. But the lectures kind of kept stressing God was a person, and Dan could not accept it. He mentally debated about Prabhupada's lectures and theories. He was partial to Dr. Radhakrishna's interpretation and yet of the Gita, and yet Swami launched ruthless attacks on such impersonal ideas. Gradually, Dan saw the barrier crumble, and he came to admit that every count the Swami was right.
So as we regularly hear, you will see the anarthas, all this negativity and everything goes away. That's why we are seeing slowly from denial and then acceptance level increases. Vijayanand.
Judy began attending both the morning and evening classes. She had to rise by 5 o'clock to get to the storefront on time, and her mother and father protested, but Judy did not care. She would ride an hour and a half on the subway before dawn, downtown to the Swami's meetings, where she would be the only girl present. When the Swami heard that Judy was an art student, he asked her to paint for Krishna. She set up a canvas in front of room of the apartment, and under his guidance, she began painting. For her first assignment, he asked her to paint a portrait of his Guru Maharaja, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He gave her a photo and instructed her. There should be a flower garland around Guru Maharaja's neck. The tilaka should be yellowish, not white, and there should be no effulgence or halo around his head. Bob. I began chanting and studying the Srimad Bhagavatam at home and attending the Kirtana and classes at the storefront. After the last Kirtana in the evening, the Swami would take a bowl made of simulated wood and a little paring knife and a couple of apples that had been sitting on the edge of his lectern. And he would cut the apples up in the little bowl and hand the bowl to a disciple. The disciple would then offer him the first piece and he would pop it into his mouth. The rest of the pieces of apple would be distributed to the crowd. I remember one time when he was chewing on his piece of apple and he spit the seeds out on the floor up against the wall. They bounced off the wall onto the floor next to the dais. And I was thinking how wonderful. No one else can do it. No one else would have the nerve to do such thing.
Okay.
So this starts with Judy. Judy began to attend the morning and the evening classes, and since she was staying far away, so she to attend the morning and the evening classes, she has to start from her house by 5, and she used to travel for an hour and a half to attend the classes. And in the night also, she spent late and attend the classes. And her father and mother were protesting, but still she did not take that seriously.
Now we'll take a pause. It is not that difficult, right? It's not that far. Coming morning and evening. Was it?
She said she would be riding hour and 1.5 hours on the subway.
So why I'm saying is we need to take inspiration from this. Spiritual, how determined she was, hour and a half, traveling twice in a day, how determination for Bhakti she had. So that's what I wanted to, when we're reading all these things, we are taking inspiration from everywhere, not just simply reading, realizing how people have dedicated. It's a very, I'm sorry I stopped, but what is the, unless there's a love, no one will travel that much. Who will travel just like that? 1.5 hours coming. And that, remember, early in the morning. And we have so much difficulty to come even one day. Please proceed.
So Swami heard that Judy was an art student, so he requested her to paint for Krishna, and as a first assignment, he asked her to paint a portrait of his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So he gave a photo and gave the instructions like how the painting should look like, and regarding the garland as well as the tilaka. So he has given the instructions for the painting. And it also discussed about the Bob. So Bob began chanting and studying the Srimad Bhagavatam at home, and he was attending the Kirtana classes at the storefront. And after the last Kirtana in the evening, usually Swami would take up a bowl of simulated wood and a little paring knife and a couple of apples, and so he used to cut into pieces, and he gives to his disciple. So his disciple offer the one piece of apple to Swami, and then he takes a one, and then the apples were distributed to the crowd present over there. And there was an one thing which was mentioned here, like Swami was chewing the apple, and he spit the seeds out on the floor up against the wall, and which bounced back and fall next to the dais. So he was thinking that it was very wonderful, and no one can do it, and only Swami can do it.
That's nice. One thing you please remember this here, and is while painting, see, we can see our parampara's greatness. There should be no effulgence or halo around his head. You all meditate on this point. You will find most of the people, in general, they make it. I hope as you understand, when the portrait comes, the great personality, you will find effulgence, a moon-like shape on the head that's presented. When print means they are enlightened person, great person like that. But Prabhupada instructed there should be no effulgence or halo around the head. Even though they're naturally, but that's he maintained that simplicity for in parampara. Sometimes many people do just for the show up that the great person has effulgence, and you just wanted to see. You will not find in our some of the paintings you find Lord Chaitanya, maybe Krishna, because they are certainly great Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay. Which Pranath Prabhu?
Yes. With his aesthetic filmmaker's eye, Dan appreciated Swamiji's manner. Dan, there was a sink right next to the dais where he sat. It was so close that he could have leaned over and touched it. After cutting up an apple, he would take the scraps and just fling them into the sink. It was very casual. I was very impressed by that. And one time, Brahmananda came up and wanted 50 cents for something, and the Swami reached down and picked up his little black purse, the kind that closes by middle clasp at the top. He snapped it open, looked inside very perspicaciously, and then his hand came up like a bird, like an eagle hovering in flight above its prey. But the hand didn't pounce. It just delicately drifted down, took out a 50-cent piece, and rose up again as if it were being lifted up on a balloon. It was graceful. It was a dance, a ballet. He just picked up this 50-cent piece and lifted it into Brahmananda's hand. I couldn't believe it. Someone asks you for a 50-cent piece, you just dig in your pockets and throw it at them. But the Swami seemed to treat everything as Krishna's property, and this 50-cent piece was treated with such care. The weeks went by. Some of the devotees had spoken to Bob about initiation, but he was unsure. He didn't know exactly what initiation was, but it seemed to him that the other devotees were eager to get him initiated because he was working and had a family. To Bob's way of thinking, he represented maturity to them, a middle class American, and they were eager to land him. Bob's wife wasn't interested, and his friends were downright opposed. He couldn't spend much time with Prabhupada or the devotees since he was either at the office or at the home with his family. Bob, so they were asking me if I was interested in initiation. I said I would think about it, and I hadn't stopped smoking. I hadn't made the final decision. The first real personal exchange I had with the Swami was when I asked for initiation. The rest of the time, I was so much in awe of him that it didn't occur to me to say anything. I always wanted to. I felt puffed up, and I always thought, well, I should be able to talk to him. Maybe I should do something. But I was always kind of reluctant to do it. I didn't think it was my place. I guess maybe I was afraid, but I was getting up early and chanting 32 rounds a day, many of them on the subway. I was afraid of the material world, because I didn't have much association with devotees and I wanted to insulate myself by chanting more. Judy was another person who was considering initiation, and I asked her what she was going to do about it. And she said, I'm thinking about it. And then she told me she had decided she would get initiated and give up all her bad habits. I began to think maybe I could give up these things too. So I asked what to do. How do I approach him? And Kirtanananda said, well, you go up to his room. I was surprised. It was so easy. Um, so Bob, pretty much talking about Prabhupada's, what was the word, aesthetic that we read, is the way he, handled everything in a Krishna conscious manner.
Yeah.
So yeah, and just that one example of that 50 cents that Brahmananda asked Prabhupada, and the way he took it out and handed, just showed how Prabhupada was treating everything as Krishna's property with so much care. And and devotees there were talking to Bob about his initiation, and he didn't know much about initiation, and he wasn't sure, and Bob also was a middle class American, and his wife wasn't much interested in this, and his friends were opposed to it, and he couldn't spend much time with Prabhupada or the devotees because he was, busy at home or at work. So Bob was still smoking at that time, and he didn't make up his mind about initiation. And then he did ask Prabhupada about initiation, and but it's just expressing his mood and what he was thinking himself. He was puffed up and thought, no problem, I can talk to him. But then Judy was another person who was considering initiation, and Bob asked her, and she was also thinking about it, and then finally she decided to get initiated and give up all her bad habits. Then it inspired Bob as well, and he was thinking that he can give these things up too, and he was wondering how he could approach Prabhupada, and Kirtanananda told him, just go up to his room and talk to him.
Judy, I think she's, what is Jagatarini, Mataji?
Yeah.
Yes, she's going to be a very, very
Yes.
nice artist eventually. So we'll see. Okay, is it my turn? I had prepared a little speech in my mind. My dear Swamiji, would you kindly accept me as your disciple and teach me about Krishna consciousness? I went up his room without an appointment and knocked on the door. I heard him say, "Come in." I entered the room and he was sitting behind his desk. He was alone. I made obeisances and he looked at me and said, "Yes." And I said, "Swamiji, will you make me your disciple?" And that's as far as I got. I was going to say, "And teach me the philosophy of Krishna consciousness," but he didn't let me finish my speech. He said, "Yes." It was so simple. I thought, well, there's nothing else to say. He has accepted me, so I thanked him and paid my obeisances and left. And you are not supposed to be up here unless you are initiated, Chitananda said. Judy was flustered. She had come upstairs to put some dirty pots in the kitchen. "Oh yes," she replied. "That's just what I wanted to talk to Swamiji about." And she went into the Prabhupada's room where he was talking with a few other people. Swamiji, could I please get initiated? She asked. And he said, do you know the 4 rules? Yes. Can you follow them? Yes. Then you can be initiated in 2 weeks. Dan was also thinking about initiation, but he wanted to wait. He was chanting 16 rounds and attending all the classes despite his reluctant wife. And he had always had difficulty with authority figures, but he could feel that the Swami was winning him over and wearing down his impersonal barrier. 2 weeks later, Prabhupada held another initiation ceremony. Bob became Rupanuga, Judy became Jadurani. Yeah. Judy became Jadurani, Dan needed a little more time. Harivol, initiated devotees ki jai. So the leaders, the big leaders of the society, and one by one were coming. So here was the Bob, right? I had prepared a little speech. Okay, I think it was Bob. Yeah, Bob, right? Bob. So Bob was thinking, contemplating, how will I meet? Because he knew in his mind a lot of awe and reverence. He was thinking, will I be able to speak? Let me plan some little script kind of thing. But as soon as he went up, very grave in Prabhupada, shortcut, that's it. Will you please make me disciple? We'll say, yes, that's it. So over, it is so merciful actually in one sense. It is not easy to serve merciful. And now Judy also followed a similar thing. He was coming. Suddenly he comes and she comes and sees Prabhupada is surrounded by some of the devotees. So she asks, can I get initiated? So Prabhupada now at least asked, will you be able to follow all the regulatory principles? He says, yes. Okay, then you will be initiated in 2 weeks. Dan he wanted to wait a little more time because he wanted to get initiated, but he was chanting 16 rounds, attending all the classes, but his wife was not very much ready. But his heart was attracted towards Swami, so that's the thing. So at this time, after 2 weeks, the initiation ceremony takes place. I don't know, I see here only 2, maybe 2 only people got initiated. Rupanuga Prabhu and Jadurani Mataji. So 8:35, now we will take the opportunity to have some reflections on this today's, not only today, Stay High Forever, chapter 20. It's good to have some reflections.
It's interesting to see how quick the initiation process was. I guess now, what I've seen now, it's like, a year to 2 years of study and this and that, where Judy sounds like she was there for a couple days or maybe a couple weeks. And it was like, hey, you're in.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, do you think that's because it was Prabhupada kind of felt an urgency to get a foothold, right?
Yes, that's a special mercy. He felt urgent, and he's very powerful. Now, on the other hand, I will say that, unfortunately, the desperation doesn't come in our heart nowadays. Many people, they think, okay, if really there's a desperation in the heart, we will also see the initiation can take place. However, on the other hand, it really doesn't matter whether it comes in few years, because the more one gets delayed, one should show from his or her sincerity how one is committed. The incidents Prabhupada gave, it was an emergency, but Prabhupada himself took initiation very late. And but his spiritual master got initiation with so much of difficulty. You remember, right? his Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to go to Gaur Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj. Every time he used to reject him. He said, no, I cannot give. I will talk to Krishna and see what he says. So yes, that's Prabhupada had short time, and he was taking that risk, and he gave sannyasi also very easily, but doesn't mean that sannyasi can be available now. Sannyasi is not given anymore. That's the emergency situation, and Prabhupada had an extra mercy on everyone. But from our side, actually, I see that, if Krishna, it's like a test of Krishna. The more we delayed, we can understand it's a test of Krishna. No, okay, I'm not getting, even after so long, I'm not getting initiation. Means, sometimes we should not feel bad about it. We should be desperate from our heart. And when the spiritual master sees this disciple is very sincere, genuine, or is desperate, then one will get it soon. So here also in spiritual life, also one has to be enthusiastic, and one has to be very, very determined. One has to be desperate as well. We are hearing so many incidents. People are getting initiation with so much of difficulty. They understand the value of it. So time is not the very big issue. Our continued sincerity, continued submissiveness, continued humility, and begging for mercy is very, very important. Actually, really doesn't matter whether we get for 2 days and 20 years like that, but we should be growing in us. However, when we take initiation, we will go very faster, provided we don't. Many initiations takes place just for the sake of namesake people do. And that's why they never grow. They never grow much. And that's what I understand, that it is a very, very rare relationship which is given by the spiritual master, rarest in this whole universe, not only in country and in the world, rarest whole universe. I can't believe that, now when you're talking about initiation, I can't believe that I got initiated to, Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. It is very unbelievable, actually. In one sense, if I look into it, it's unbelievable that we are sitting and we are hearing and we are getting ready, or we got initiated to this. Say, not even $1 trillion is not in front of him, has no value. It's very, but as a aspiring disciples, we must understand its value. Then we will grow. That's what it's called, gratitude. Those devotees were very grateful, that I got some or other. They stayed in the moment, but those were not. They left the moment. Now also I am seeing devotees, they don't understand what they got it, and after some time they think, oh, familiarity and breeds contempt, and they find, oh, now I know everything. Kala, done. Their relationship is not very strong, but it is a relationship of initiation. Is a very fortunate, very, very fortunate, and one should keep that treasure of bhakti in very, very carefully and nourish it. And thank you. You pointed out that, but it reminds me how grateful I should be day and night to be in association of Vaishnavas. No one understands this, where we are, what association we are. I'm sorry to tell, that's the fact. If you have understood, we would have acted like Judy at least. Judy, she's traveling, for not only her, Jadurani, there's so many devotees used to travel 3 hours, 4 hours. And can anyone believe for Sunday feast? 3 hours, 4 hours, people, because those days not those many Sunday temples were there. Now also not many temples. Delaware we didn't have. One is Baltimore and one is Philadelphia. Can you guess what is the distance? At least 2.5 hour distance. I'm just giving example. So temples were very, very rare. This movement, this association, this transcendental knowledge is. I hope one day I will appreciate what we got. Unbelievable, and I do not deserve, which I got. Hope I will have this. Somehow you brought that point, and that made me think more deeper into it. Sorry, I took a little longer. Any other questions, comments?
I think this was the first time where Prabhupada with his disciples went to Washington Square Park and Tompkins Square Park for the Sankirtan movement. We read in this chapter.
It is a big chapter, right? We read.
Yeah, it's a big chapter. Yeah.
And Allen Ginsberg also visited. First time he offered some donations and everything. Allen Ginsberg. Prabhupada's visa story also we read. We read about Tompkins Square Park, as you said, Washington Square Park, public chanting now. And we read about Love Pageant Rally. Bob, Judy, they all came, Jadurani and others. There are so much. Anything else? One more minute. Newspapers, a lot of newspapers, advertisements came, New York Times and other newspapers, right? We discussed many things. I think reflections are very important. That helps us think, and it'll help us later as well. So hope everybody enjoyed. Today we finished the 20 chapters. That's chapter 20. Very nice. I hope other people can join or they can read by themselves. I know they will not read by themselves. It'll go for another 10 years for them to go. But thank you so much for joining regularly. One last comment. Swati Mataji had the son, we mentioned, and she named her son Avaya. Avaya is Prabhupada's name, right? So,
Very nice.
yeah. When she comes, we all can congratulate. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Krishna. AJ,
Hey,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Gaurang was remembering. Gaurang was asking, invite AJ for his birthday. Nipa, where do you live? Yeah, sunny day.
This
Gaurang,
Saturday?
this Saturday, if you want to come, I don't know, one night situation is different, so we don't want to insist. But Gaurang said, okay, let's invite AJ for birthday.
I would. I right now I'm going to be at the beach, but if that changes, I'll definitely be there.
Yeah, no problem.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Whereabouts do you live?
I live across the Lumsmont Park.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Then off of, what is that, 896 right there?
Not in Dover. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. No, I appreciate the invite. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
All right. Hare Krishna. Have a good night.